Welcome. This is Neurofeedback Foundations, Module 3, Brain Basics. We've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to break this module down into 3 parts so that you can go back and re-listen and digest and take notes and look up other things as desired throughout this module. Take your time and check other resources. There's a lot to learn, and we're just going to skim the surface, but I'm going to talk about the most important things that we need to learn for neurofeedback. You can take an entire major in neuroscience, and so I'm going to try and compact what's the most important in this lecture. So let's get started. Learning objectives for this module. Number 1, how many cells does the brain contain and what are the 2 main types? How is electricity generated in the brain cells? What happens at the synaptic junction? How is medication different from neurofeedback? Who was the first patient to be described in literature that taught the scientific community about the localization of different functions of the brain? I'd like you to learn to name the 4 main lobes of the liver and understand why gray matter is gray and white matter is white. What lobes are primarily responsible for executive function, reasoning, decision-making, and planning? What lobes are primarily responsible for short-term memory, interpreting sound, and language? What lobes are primarily responsible for interpreting somatosensory input, meaning touch and temperature and feel, as well as spatial and math skills? What lobes are primarily responsible for processing and interpreting visual information? And finally, what part of the brain connects the endocrine system to the rest of the central nervous system? There is so much to learn. When I was an undergraduate student back in the 1980s, I could have taken a couple of courses on neuroscience. Today, you can spend an entire 4 years at the undergraduate level learning about the brain and the neurosystem and the nervous system. In other words, we could spend years talking about all the amazing information that we've learned about the brain and the nervous system in the last 2 decades. But I'm going to try and stick to the basics that we need to know about for neurofeedback. First is a brief overview of the nervous system. Second, I will spend most of the module talking about the cerebrum. And finally, I'll wrap it up discussing the deeper structures. There is a direct correlation between regional brain function and the systems our clients are experiencing. Therefore, it is imperative that we have at least a basic knowledge of neuroanatomy and physiology. So the basics. The nervous system is the control center of the body. It is divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is made up of the brain stem, and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system is made up of the ganglia, which are clusters of nerve bodies, and the nerves. The peripheral nervous system is further divided into the somatic or voluntary nervous system and the autonomic or involuntary nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is further broken down into the sympathetic or activating and parasympathetic or deactivating nervous system. When we practice DBT, teaching people calming exercises such as box breathing, or if anyone does biofeedback here, such as thermal biofeedback, we are working with the autonomic nervous system, specifically teaching people to activate their parasympathetic nervous system so they can move from the fight, flight, freeze into rest and digest. So this is a great diagram here, and we can see on the left that when we are in fight or flight, blood vessels are constricted, pupils dilate, the airways relax, heartbeat accelerates. You can see here down that we sweat. That's to keep us cool. It also shuts down our gut because we do not need to be digesting food when we're running away from a bear or a tiger or a rattlesnake or a gang member if you're living on the streets of New York. And when we are in the resting state, rest and digest, our bronchioles actually constrict. Our salivary glands secrete saliva. Our heart rate is slowed. Our stomach is relaxed. We stimulate the pancreas to digest food, and so on. So this is really an important concept for all of us in mental health to understand the brain-body connection and how we are already, most of us, doing some DBT if you're in mental health with our clients or patients, and how we are already connecting via the peripheral nervous system to the brain. Now, the basic units of the nervous system. The brain contains about 86 billion to 100 billion, if you're a newborn, neurons, and even more glial cells. Neurons are the cells that transmit information to, from, and within the brain. And glial cells make up the supporting system. Glia means glue. As we learn more about the brain, it may be more fair to call the neurons the main cast members and the glial cells the supporting cast members, because without the glial cells, the brain really could not function. This is the end of part 1, module 3. I would love it if you would take the time to write out, draw some of these cells, color them. That helps cement this into your memory. We'll see you for part 2.